Have you ever asked yourself why there are women who live alone, without a partner, without looking for anything, and yet don't seem lost? It's not sadness. It's not desperation. It's not a lack of options. It's a choice. It's clarity. It's power. And that makes people uncomfortable. Because when a woman chooses to be alone, she's not isolating herself. She's finding herself. And that kind of encounter doesn't come with applause or validation. It comes with silence, with introspection, with a kind of freedom that doesn't need to shout to feel real. The problem isn't her solitude. The problem is that she doesn't need anyone beside her to feel complete. And that, for many, is terrifying. It breaks the script. It dismantles the rescue narrative. It eliminates the urgency of "you should have someone." Carl Jung said that everything we deny in ourselves becomes shadow. And these women, the ones who walk alone without seeking approval, are exactly that, the living reflection of the collective shadow. They don't dress to seduce. They don't expose themselves to please. They don't scream for attention. They choose themselves. They preserve themselves. They prioritize themselves. And that's what hurts, because in a world that pushes women toward the urgency of attachment, they walk slowly. Where others see coldness, there is a filter. Where they see indifference, there is discernment. It's not that they don't love, it's that they no longer burn for borrowed fires. Most men don't know what to do with a woman who doesn't need to be saved. And many women are still learning to recognize themselves in that mirror that doesn't reflect lack, but sovereignty. The woman who lives alone is not empty. She's operating on a different level, a level where nothing is begged for, only chosen, where there's no pleading, only observation, where peace isn't traded for companionship. Maybe this doesn't make sense to you yet. Maybe you still interpret it as pride, self-sabotage, or unresolved trauma. But deep down, something in you recognizes it. A silent question awakens every time you see a woman walk alone without fear. What if this silent path were the only one that leads to the most important kind of love? The one that begins with you. The silence that surrounds a woman who lives alone is not emptiness. It's sanctuary. And those who don't understand that space call it coldness, distance, arrogance. But it's not a wall. It's a temple. She didn't build that fortress to shut the world out. She built it so she wouldn't lose herself. Jung said that everything we don't face in ourselves, we project onto others. And maybe that's why so many still confuse solitude with absence, when in truth, it may be the only fertile ground where you finally meet yourself. While the world rushes to fill itself with noise, attention, and empty relationships, she looked inward. And there, in the darkness of her unconscious, she sat face to face with her ghosts. Childhood absences, attachments disguised as love, betrayals that were called destiny. Her decision to be alone didn't come from pain. It came from a wound that had already healed. She didn't stop believing in love, and she just stopped accepting cheap versions of something that made her smaller. That woman knew chaos. She loved until she disappeared. She begged for crumbs, thinking it was a feast. And one day, she woke up. Not suddenly, but through disappointments that stopped hurting and began to teach her. What you see now is not coldness, it's emotional maturity. And maturity scares people because it demands presence, depth, and truth. It doesn't seek company, it seeks reciprocity. It's not attracted to promises, it's attracted to real presence. And that's why many don't understand her. Not because she's difficult, but because she is complete. When a woman becomes whole, she awakens two reactions: admiration and fear. Admiration from those who also seek to become whole. fear from those who are still waiting to be saved by someone else. She doesn't want to fill anyone else's void. She wants to share a path with someone who has also found themselves. Until then, she chooses her own company, not out of resignation, out of loyalty to her soul. She doesn't hide. She protects herself. And there's a big difference between isolating and preserving. But the world still mistrusts a woman like that. A woman who doesn't need to be chosen because she has already chosen herself. Jung said that where convention dominates, authenticity can barely breathe. And this woman doesn't live by convention. She lives by essence. She hears phrases like, "You're too closed off," "You're too intense," "No one's perfect." And she smiles. Not to please, but to remind herself that what others call too much, for her, is the dignified minimum. The minimum it took her years to recognize she deserved. She's not looking for perfection. She's looking for someone with enough maturity to love without destroying. Someone who has done their inner work. And let's be honest, that's not something you find on every corner. What's unsettling isn't what she says. It's what she represents. She is living proof that it's possible to be happy without belonging to anyone. And that bothers people. Men who build their worth on others' insecurity feel threatened. Women still trapped in the need for approval feel judged. But she's not here to confront. She's just being. And in a world addicted to external validation, being authentic is already a revolution. She's not in a rush. She doesn't speed up under pressure. She doesn't run out of fear. She respects her own pace, and that's why she awakens a silent rage in a society that wants everything now. She wants depth, while the world collects distractions. She wants presence, while everyone else offers availability. She desires souls, not masks posing in Instagram stories. And when she says no, it's not a game. When she leaves, it's not drama. When she chooses to stay home instead of going out with someone empty, it's not arrogance. It's clarity. A clarity earned through pain, through loss, through letting go. And that clarity is her greatest revolution. She doesn't live to please. She lives to be. And in a world where everyone wants to impress, a woman who simply is dangerous. Maybe the problem isn't her solitude. Maybe what truly disturbs everyone is her peace. Jung said it best. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. And that's what she did. It wasn't quick. It was a brutal process. Taking off the masks, breaking dependencies, piecing herself back together. She no longer defines herself through others' eyes. She sees herself with her own. And that changes everything. And you? How many times have you wondered if being alone is failure or freedom? And how many times have you felt the need to justify it? She did too. She also believed for a time that being alone meant being broken. Until she understood worse than an empty home is one filled with lies. One day, she got it. She realized it's better to be alone than to become invisible inside a relationship. And that day, without witnesses, without noise, she made a pact with herself, never again accept less than what she truly deserves. Her path isn't a straight line. It has days of doubt, moments of nostalgia, silences that feel endless. But it also holds something growing, a strength not born from someone else's love, but from her own awareness. She learned that true love isn't forced, doesn't consume, doesn't manipulate. The love she wants doesn't demand, doesn't suffocate, doesn't take. It uplifts, it frees, it walks beside without devouring. And until that love comes, She chooses to remain alone. Not out of pride, out of integrity, because she's no longer willing to be half of anything. She is the living embodiment of the individuation process Jung described. She shattered, descended into her shadow, faced her unconscious, and came back, not the same, more whole than ever. Now that she sees herself, recognizes herself, listens to herself, she can't go back. She doesn't want someone to complete her. She wants someone who shares the same clarity, and that, to many, is intimidating, because clarity demands real presence. It demands emotional responsibility, and most still love from lack, from fear, from possession. If she walks alone today, it's because every step carries a lesson. Every no, she says, is an act of self-respect. Every absence she sets is a declaration. Love is not to be begged for. Not anymore. She no longer needs to prove anything to anyone. And that certainty, born from deep within, changes everything. Because a woman who has rebuilt herself from ashes doesn't break the same way again. Not because of what she has, but because of what she no longer needs. The woman who lives alone is no longer the one who once begged to be loved. Something inside her collapsed, and it was that collapse that set her free, because sometimes, only through fracture, can the soul be remade into another form. Jung said it clearly. The tree that wants to touch the sky must have roots that reach to hell. And that's what she lived. She descended into the hell of her own story, faced her oldest fears, carried inherited pain, bore traumas that weren't only hers, but belonged to every woman who came before her. She broke cycles, said no to relationships repeating the same toxic script, understood it wasn't her job to save anyone, nor to heal anyone, nor to accept scraps out of fear of being alone. And when she stopped accepting less, the world tried to convince her she was wrong. But she didn't shout. She didn't explain. She just walked away. First with doubt, then with awareness, and finally, with vulnerability. Because someone who has lived in her own abyss no longer fears the dark. She learned to feed herself with silence, to soothe herself with her own presence. She isn't inaccessible. She simply no longer allows herself to be invaded. And there's an immense difference between opening the heart and letting oneself be emptied. She opens, yes, but only to those who arrive in truth, not with rehearsed phrases or hollow promises. She's seen enough to tell the difference between real presence and empty performance. Her intuition is no longer just intuition, it's a radar. Her energy is a filter, and from a distance she can feel when depth is missing. Her voice doesn't shake when she leaves. She doesn't hesitate to walk away, because her transformation wasn't superficial. It was archetypal, as if she had awakened an ancient memory, a buried wisdom, the certainty that women weren't born to please, but to express, not to be molded, but to transcend. And in that awakening, something ignited. A wild woman, intuitive, emotionally sovereign. A woman who, alone, is not lost. She's in communion with something greater, with her soul, with her destiny. No matter how much they try to reduce her with labels, cold, difficult, distant, none of it sticks, because she no longer lives to fit in. She lives to expand. She no longer begs for attention. She radiates presence. She no longer waits to be chosen, she chooses. And that inversion of logic unsettles those still trying to control the feminine. But she's no longer there. She crossed the threshold. And on the other side, She understood that the real relationship only begins after you've loved yourself so deeply that you no longer need anyone to complete you. There's something sacred in the way she walks through the world. She doesn't need applause, nor public validation. Her confidence is silent, and it's in that silence that her strength lives. Jung said that everything we face within eventually becomes destiny. Maybe that's why this woman, by choosing herself again and again, became the author of a destiny that few understand, but many secretly envy. She no longer tries to fill emptiness with promises. She no longer needs to convince anyone that she deserves love. She doesn't ask for space in anyone's life, because she understood that presence should never be begged for. It must be invited. And if the invitation doesn't come from truth, she simply leaves. Not with anger, not with sadness. She leaves with the dignity of someone who's already been lost and abandoned so many times that she's no longer willing to repeat the same wound again. What few understand is that this woman still desires love. She still wants to be chosen, embraced, truly seen, but she wants it without losing herself, because she spent too long trying to fit into molds too small for the soul she carries inside. Now she only surrenders where there's space to be whole, and that requires more than romance. It requires consciousness. It requires having faced one's own shadow and still choosing to love. She's not looking for fleeting distractions. She doesn't want games or phases. She seeks one alliance, a connection without domination or submission, where both can grow without dimming their light, without silencing their pain, without trimming their dreams. If that seems like too much for some, so be it. She would rather wait than survive another emotional ruin. Many call that arrogance, but it's self-love in its purest form. We are witnessing the rise of a new female archetype, a woman who has descended far below the surface and risen from her own depths, who grew tired of being merely desired and chose to be respected. She didn't choose solitude because she gave up on love. She chose it because she understood that real love is never built from mistrust. And when a woman reaches that understanding, everything in her life begins to change. She no longer needs to raise her voice. Her mere presence speaks. Wherever she enters, something silently rearranges. It's not mysticism, it's energy. It's the invisible weight of someone who has fought brutal inner wars and chose to return in peace. Not because she conquered all her fears, but because she learned to live with them without surrendering. Jung would say she achieved wholeness not by eliminating her opposites, but by integrating them. This woman doesn't reject love. She simply stopped kneeling in unbalanced relationships. She no longer shrinks so that someone else can shine. She doesn't want love if her essence must be edited. She wants a love where she can be shadow and light, laughter and silence, calm and storm. Because she understands that anyone who only loves what's pretty still doesn't know how to love, and anyone who can only tolerate sweetness has yet to discover the beauty of bitterness, so essential for growth. She's too wild to sit where she's chained, too free to accept prisons disguised as protection, too sensitive to tolerate bonds without balance, and at the same time, strong enough to keep choosing this path even when few understand it, even when it hurts, even when it's lonely, even when it's misunderstood. This is the journey of a soul that has awakened. She doesn't seek instant validation. She prefers the deeper truth. Deep down, the world fears women like this. Women who don't need. Women who don't shrink. Women who refuse to be molded. Because they challenge invisible structures. They question ancient pacts. They break silent emotional contracts that once said a woman only has value if she belongs to someone. And when they break those contracts, when they write their own narrative, they inspire others. And that, for the system, is dangerously revolutionary. So she keeps going, sometimes with tears in her eyes, sometimes with her head held high, but always with her feet firmly on the ground. Because now she knows she's not alone. She's with herself. And after everything she's been through, that is enough. The love that comes after will not be salvation. It will be celebration. It won't arrive to fill her. It will arrive to overflow. When a woman decides to walk alone, the world rushes to convince her she's wrong. But deep down, something within her aligns. It's not pride, it's not rebellion. It's a rare kind of wisdom that only grows in silence, the same one Jung called individuation. The process of becoming fully who you are, without masks, without obligations, without pretending. And when that happens, nothing external holds more power than the truth that pulses within you. That truth doesn't need to shout. It reveals itself in how you close a door without guilt, in how you walk away silently from spaces that no longer nourish you, in how you smile in peace, even when no one stands by your side. Because you discovered that being alone is not a punishment. It is a flight of loyalty toward your own soul. And the soul of an awakened woman does not submit, does not imitate, does not beg. It simply is. And that is enough. The world will keep trying to convince you that you're missing something. It will continue offering distractions, plastic princes, love made for display. But you already looked behind the glass. You already understood. It's not about finding someone. It's about never losing yourself again. And when that realization blossoms, everything changes. Desire becomes discernment. Lack becomes choice. Hope becomes a path. What once hurt now teaches. What once was chained now is set free. And you feel it. Deep down, that strange mixture, that soft fire. Maybe it's a memory, an old wound, a nostalgia that never had words. Maybe it's the image of a woman you once knew, or the woman you are becoming. In any case, something within you wants to be seen more clearly, something that no longer fits into old molds, something that, if you allow it, can completely transform the way you love, the way you connect, and the way you inhabit yourself. That woman who walks alone is not a flaw in the system. She is a living sign, a symbol of emotional freedom, a silent proof that yes, it is possible to rebuild without haste, without fear, and without asking for permission. She's not ahead of anyone, but she follows no one either. She walks her own path, unique, non-negotiable, and on that path she leaves behind small flames for others who are also awakening. If something in you was stirred by these words, maybe it's because you're already ready for a different kind of love. A love that doesn't come from outside, a love that is born when you reconcile with yourself, a love that smells like silence, presence, and truth, one that isn't begged for, isn't performed. It is simply held. And if it hasn't arrived yet, maybe it's because you first had to become the woman who no longer accepts less than what she deserves. And if this message found you at just the right moment, if it awakened someone you forgot was living inside you, don't keep it to yourself. Don't silence it. Share this video with other women who need to remember their strength. Comment, subscribe, not out of impulse, out of choice, because when something touches the soul, the least we can do is allow it to keep resonating in us and through us.